Welcome to another edition of Expert Talks by Kalkine TV. I'm Sage. Today's guest is Mr. Brian Tang, President of Fundamental Research Corporation. And Brian is a passionate equity researcher and entrepreneur who started his career with the banking system in debt syndications. And Brian will share his insights with us today from working in some of the world's largest international banks and from leading Fundamental Research Corp, of course, one of the largest issuer-paid independent stock market research firms globally. So bringing you live today, we have Mr. Brian Tang, President of Fundamental Research Corp. Welcome to the show, Brian.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Thanks so much for joining us. Your company's goal is to provide high-quality, accessible equity research to a broad audience whilst adhering to strong ethical standards. We're glad you have time to join us today. So in your opinion, Brian, what are the main ingredients of successful investing?
Well, first of all, I think you need to have a solid foundation in the basic tools for investing, which would be a good understanding of economics, both micro and macro, good knowledge of finance, as well as accounting to be able to look through the financial statements. Those were what I would say the basic tools that you need. And then you need to have a certain personality to be able to ignore daily ups and downs in the market and to be able to think long term about your investment strategy.
Thank you so much for summing that up for us. I'm sure years of study and keeping up to date with articles and reports will also help to just maintain your knowledge of how the cycles are changing, especially in this unpredictable environment we're in. So the metaverse and digital assets have become a hot topic for tech businesses. Would you please elaborate on the vital tips every investor should keep in mind while embarking on investing in this realm of the virtual world?
Yeah, sure. So I think there's a lot of opportunity with any new emerging sector, but investors need to keep in mind that it's very new and it's very early on. What I think they should keep their eyes on are the hardware, because I think really that's what's limiting mass adoption of the metaverse. Right now, you need to wear a headset, and the battery life and the comfort level, I don't think are quite there yet for it to be widely adopted. But as the hardware evolves, I believe eventually it could become as common as having a cell phone.
Wow, thank you so much. That is incredible information, actually. So true. So, what are the essential criteria you follow while doing your market research?
So what we do and is run screens. So depending on what type of industry we're looking at, um, but on a basic level, we will look for companies trading below a certain price earnings level, strong free cash flow, um, certain growth targets. And I'm talking more about what I'm doing personally for allocation of capital. On the other side, our firm also covers a lot of more speculative stocks. So, one sector we cover is the mining space, specifically junior miners that might not yet be in production. So, for those, we would look at the type of commodity involved, where the people are searching for the metal, where the project is located, and then very important, the management team, if they have a track record of producing in the mining space.
That's really, really interesting as well. And I suppose how this economic data all relates and what sort of relationships they have, whether it's inverse or whether they seem to follow each other, like in regards to the yields and the price of gold and things that may not be correlating as they usually do, and what fundamental factors are affecting that. That's all very interesting as well, but it does take years of study into it to really understand it. So if people do want to further their research into this sort of sector or this fundamental area of analysis, do you have any tips for where they can go to get started?
Well, first of all, I think they should go to our website, researchfrc.com. But it's important to just keep up to date with what's going on in the world. So, reading the major news and financial publications. And then, as you said, tracking all the significant data. So, depending on what type of industry you're looking at, whether it's gold or the tech sector, it's really just staying up to date with the key developments in that space and all the news, and then thinking ahead. So that's really important when you're talking about investing. It's not, where we've been is very important. Obviously, we need to look at past data, and then being able to take that data and coming up with a forecast or a prediction of what's to come is, I think, what separates a successful investor from one that may not be as successful.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your insights there. And there have been some significant trends actually developing in digital assets. Last year was probably the year NFTs and the decentralized finance sector made its mark. What opportunities do you think are developing as a future trends for investors in the space?
So that's very interesting because at Fundamental Research, we believe that there are opportunities in the digital asset space. And one way to gain exposure to them without taking on as much risk as investing directly in something like, say, Bitcoin, would be to invest in sort of the companies that are in that infrastructure. So a crypto exchange or which makes their fees and cash flow from the trading of crypto. So actually, the more volatile the markets are, and whether the crypto is going up or down, the exchanges are making a fee both ways. So that leaves you less exposed to if you just have a long position in Bitcoin and it drops 10%, you're going to be off 10%, whereas the exchange is still making money both ways. So we think that's a better way to gain exposure to that digital asset space.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing your insights on the sector there. So as we start to wind up the discussion, Brian, in times of high market volatility and unpredictable shifts, the investors are looking for some guidance and direction from companies like yourself. And what are the most common mistakes that you are noticing, and how can investors overcome them, please?
Yeah, so I think two of the biggest mistakes that investors make are selling when everything is dropping. You need to have a different mindset. And if you're confident in your research, let's say you've invested in a company and you're very confident in the outlook for the company, and say a micro event like what's happening in Eastern Europe right now impacts the market overall, and your stock position also goes down. But if that doesn't have a long-term impact on the business and it's just dropping because the overall market is dropping, you shouldn't panic. Some investors will start selling when the overall market goes down, and I think that's a mistake. You should actually have the opposite view and just buy more. So if you're confident in something and it goes on sale, you should buy more. And I think the second mistake is to differentiate between a good company and a good stock. So a company can be fantastic in terms of the fundamentals, but you have to pay a good price for it. So if it's overvalued just because it's a good company doesn't mean that it will be a good investment because you're buying at a high valuation, and vice versa. A company may not be the greatest, but at some point it might make sense to invest if you can pick it up at a good valuation. And then I like to use a typewriter example where there's some companies that are so, like a typewriter. If there was a typewriter public company right now, no matter what the price is, it probably wouldn't make sense at any valuation to invest in it. So those are the things to keep in mind.
Thank you so much for your insights there. I mean, it really does open up a whole new discussion there about the differentiation between a good company and a good stock, and what actually makes a stock deflationary at these times of high volatility and inflation. Thank you so much, Brian. Your insights have been invaluable. We do appreciate your time.
Thank you, and glad to be on the show.
Thanks. And if you've just joined us, we had a very interesting discussion with Mr. Brian Tang, President of Fundamental Research Corp. Please watch the full interview via Kalkine Media's YouTube channel, and keep watching Kalkine Media for more of the live expert talks and market updates. Till the next episode, stay apprised and invest wise with Kalkine Media.